Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
In the west, storms are going to hit one after another, powered by the warming Pacific current known as El Nino.
El Nino Round 2 is packing a punch. This morning, mud cascaded down hillsides right onto the freeway. Drivers stuck in rising water were rescued from their swamped cars, and several feet of snow blanketed the mountains. These storms battering the west coast also drenched Arizona, where a man and his young grandson were pulled from their Hummer after getting swept up in raging floodwaters. Samantha Young is the child's relieved mother.
Unbelievably thankful. I can thank God, 1,000 times. It wouldn't be enough.
Record amounts of rain have fallen in parts of Los Angeles, and the National Weather Service says a gust-nado damaged 8 buildings near downtown, ripping off part of the roof and blowing out windows.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea has just made an announcement that it has successfully carried out its first hydrogen bomb test today. And state television said that the test was performed at 10 a.m. based on the strategic determination of the Workers' Party. And the China Earthquake Network Center says it detected a 4.9 magnitude tremor next to the DPRK's main atomic test site in the northeast of the country. And the DPRK performed nuclear tests in 2006, 2009, and 2013.
The Punggye-ri nuclear test site is only about 100 kilometers from the Chinese border. Surveillance cameras on highways captured ground tremors in Yanbian Autonomous Prefecture, as well as Baishan City in Jilin Province. Residents and students were evacuated from buildings while there were cracks spotted on the ground. Chinese authorities are checking the environmental impact of the test. The Foreign Ministry says it will take all necessary measures to ensure the safety of people on the Chinese side. Spokesperson Hua Chunying says China firmly opposes the latest nuclear test conducted by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. She said China always advocates denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. We start in Libya, where a massive truck bomb killed at least 65 people at a police training center in the town of Zliten. Dozens of others were injured. Hundreds of recruits were gathering there when the blast took place. No one has claimed responsibility. Libya has been beset by chaos since the violent overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Fires were still raging at Libya's biggest oil terminals on Thursday after a series of attacks by Islamic State.
Now, Human Rights Watch has confirmed that Saudi Arabia and its allies are using cluster bombs in Yemen, stressing that that amounts to a war crime. The rights group said cluster bombs were airdropped on residential neighborhoods in the capital Sana'a on January the 6th. It stressed that such attacks are serious violations of the laws of war. HRW said Saudi Arabia's repeated use of cluster munitions in the middle of a crowded city suggests intent to harm civilians. It called on the UN Human Rights Council to create an independent inquiry into alleged violations of the laws of war by all sides. On Tuesday, the UN said it received reports that Saudi Arabia used internationally banned cluster bombs in Yemen's Hajjah province. Demonstrators have described the use of internationally banned weapons by Saudis and their allies as a mass execution. Friday's rally came a day after both the UN and Human Rights Watch confirmed the use of cluster munitions in Yemen this week. According to HRW, Saudi forces have dropped cluster bombs in several neighborhoods of Sana'a to intentionally kill civilians. The rights body says the use of such weapons, which have been supplied by the U.S. to Saudis, amounts to war crimes.
Surveillance video shows the horrifying moment when 33-year-old Philadelphia police officer Jesse Hartnett was ambushed at point-blank range.
Shot fired! Get those scream! I'm shot! I'm bleeding heavily! All cars stand by. We have an officer shot.
Police say the suspect, 30-year-old Edward Archer, fired at least a dozen times. Here you can see his arm inside the patrol car. Even though Officer Hartnett was struck 3 times in the left arm, he bravely exited his vehicle and pursued the suspect on foot, firing his weapon and wounding the perpetrator. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross.
That is chilling, absolutely chilling when you watch that. And if that doesn't just make the hairs on your neck just raise when you see that, it's scary. That's all I can say.
Police say that Archer admitted guilt, identified himself as a Muslim, and pledged allegiance to ISIS.
According to him, he believed that the police defend laws that are contrary to the teachings of the Quran.
Commissioner Ross says his biggest regret was that the firearm used was stolen from a fellow police officer's home in 2013.
How concerning is it when you hear that that gun that suspect used was that of another officer?
It cuts deep. I mean, things happen, but it cuts even deeper.
Hartnett remains in the hospital in critical but stable condition. His father, Robert Hartnett, says his son always wanted to be a police officer.
He's a tough road. He's a tough guy. He's an excellent Philadelphia.
The Islamic State says members of its Egyptian affiliate have carried out an attack on a hotel accommodating Israeli tourists in Cairo in response to a call by the group's leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi to target Jews everywhere. ISIL released a statement on its Twitter page saying light arms had been used in the attack at a hotel near Cairo's pyramids on Thursday. Egypt's Interior Ministry says a group of youths fired fireworks and pellets at security forces. No one was hurt in the attack. Egypt's tourism industry, a vital source of hard currency in the country, is highly sensitive to attacks by militants.
Chinese stocks rebounded a day after trading was suspended following a 7% plunge that kicked off a global rout in stocks. But a good deal of damage had already been inflicted on the U.S. market in the new year.
This is a weird start to 2016.
That it is. Through Thursday, this had been the worst week for stocks since 2011. The Dow lost more than 3.5%. A market rout in China Thursday started another global stock slide that sent the Dow tumbling almost 400 points. The plunge in Chinese stocks was set off by concern Beijing is allowing its currency to weaken too fast against the dollar. But today, the Shanghai Composite Index ended 2% higher after swinging between gains and losses. Analysts said the market was likely being supported by buying from Chinese government entities. Average Americans with investments and retirement funds are understandably concerned. But experts say don't sell or change your 401k in a panic.
If you end up selling when the market's down, you're setting yourself up for losses potentially.
Sell-offs like this week may present an opportunity to purchase stocks at a discount.
If there are stocks out there that you've been following over time that in your opinion have been too expensive for you to purchase, this might be the time to step in.
Or this could be only a pause in a very bad month. Analysts warn that anyone with money connected to this market needs to be very careful, and that a series of aftershocks from last year's boom and bust could shake markets for months to come. But even so, many experts still believe stocks will go higher in the years ahead.
Egypt's Interior Ministry said 2 men armed with knives entered the outdoor restaurant at the front of the hotel and attacked the tourists, 2 Austrians and 1 Swede. Security forces opened fire on the assailants, killing 1 and seriously wounding the 2nd. The dead attacker has been identified as a 21-year-old student from Cairo's neighborhood of Giza. The wounded tourists were taken to hospital. The attack came just hours after the local affiliate of ISIL claimed responsibility for an attack a day earlier on a hotel in Cairo.
The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for a deadly suicide bombing at a checkpoint in Libya's oil heartland. ISIL's Libya branch released a statement saying Thursday's attack in Ras Lanouf, east of its coastal bastion of Sirte, was carried out by a foreign fighter using an explosives-packed car. 6 people, including a baby, were killed. Another suicide bomber on Thursday attacked a police training school in Zlatan, west of Tripoli, killing more than 50 people. No group has yet claimed responsibility for that blast. It was the deadliest attack since 2011. Meanwhile, EU Foreign Affairs Chief Federica Mogherini is seeking to shore up support for a unity government. She was due to hold talks in Tunis on Friday with Libyan politicians.
Hundreds of demonstrators from the Shiite majority took to the streets on Friday. They were protesting against Saudi Arabia's execution of the Shiite cleric last week. Police fired tear gas while protesters threw petrol bombs as they tried to reach a main highway. Sunni-ruled Bahrain is a close ally of Saudi Arabia. The nation cut diplomatic ties with Iran following tensions sparked by the cleric's execution.
It has now been more than a week since a group of armed men took over a federal property in Oregon, triggering a standoff with law enforcement. And as John Blackstone reports, there is still no resolution in sight.
At a regular morning news conference, the armed group holding the wildlife refuge insisted they are here to stay.
We came here to go to work, to help people, and that's what we're going to do.
At a community meeting last night, residents agreed the federal government exercises too much control here. Rancher Tim Smith.
There's so many federal regulations that accrue to federal land.
But still, local residents have mixed feelings about the occupation. Just 3 miles from the refuge, rancher Tom Davis and his son Jake continue the hard work of raising cattle on the high desert.
I do think it's probably time for these guys to go home, and I just pray that nothing will really happen to them.
We haven't felt threatened at all by them. As long as they don't get violent, I think it's good coverage.
Good coverage, he says, for the challenges ranchers face across the West, where so much land is controlled by the federal government. Nearly 53% of Oregon is federally owned. It's much the same across most western states. Ranchers who often depend on federal land for grazing need permits from the Bureau of Land Management, where they complain the bureaucracy can be oppressive.
All of a sudden, the BLM, where it used to have just a few people managed, now there's hundreds of people in there.
While both the occupiers and local ranchers say they should take control of the land, the leader of the local Paiute Indians says history suggests another answer.
We as a tribe view that this is still our land, no matter who's living on it.
The conflict over who controls the West's wide open spaces seems as old as the West itself.
The U.S. says it has flown a B-52 over South Korea in a show of force following North Korea's recent nuclear test. B-52 is capable of delivering nuclear weapons. The U.S. military says the bomber was joined by its F-16 and South Korea's F-15 fighters. South Korean Defense Minister Han Min-koo has also toured the Army's Missile Command Center amid rising tensions with the North. Meanwhile, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has said that Pyongyang's recent hydrogen bomb test was a self-defensive act against a U.S. threat of nuclear war. Kim said that his country had a sovereign right to conduct the nuclear test without being criticized. North Korea has in numerous cases accused the United States of deploying nuclear weapons on the Korean peninsula. Washington, however, insists that it has no nukes stationed in South Korea.
We are witnessing the worst humanitarian disaster.
The path to Denmark and Sweden is becoming harder for migrants and refugees, and the voice of protest is growing louder on both sides of the border. The focus of dissent here is this: identity checks at Copenhagen airport before the Swedish border. It means the majority of migrants and refugees cannot reach Sweden to claim asylum there because few carry passports. These protesters believe that shouldn't be allowed.
At the emergency EU meeting between Denmark and Sweden in Brussels this week, both sides agreed to take down these temporary border checks as soon as possible, but only if the flow of refugees reduced first significantly. And at the moment, there's no clear sign of that happening.
21 bodies washed up on a beach in Turkey on the 5th of January. Even in winter, many are still willing to risk the journey to Europe. Even in so-called refugee-friendly countries, pressure is building for a firmer approach. In the German city of Cologne on Saturday, a far-right protest turned violent. Anger fueled by a wave of apparently coordinated sexual attacks on New Year's Eve, some of them allegedly committed by asylum seekers. Denmark takes far fewer than Germany. That's also a sore point here.
If you look at a country like Sweden, they have taken so many more refugees, and the same with Germany, and here we are in the middle and we're not really participating.
Denmark's government disagrees, which could mean more protests like these.
This is what we fight.